Hello, students. In History 132, I hope everybody's well and are remaining safe. We're glad to have you back for this semester. Now, today is our first lecture of this semester, and it's chapter 16 in volume 2 of your book. It's entitled The Acceleration of Global Contact. Let's do some set the stage here. If you've taken History 131, you are familiar with the Black Death, the Renaissance period, and of course, the Protestant Reformation. Basically, Protestant Reformation rebelled against the Catholic Church and established Protestantism. The leader of this movement was, of course, Martin Luther, a German friar, who established what we call Lutheranism today. So if you are a Christian, you are either a Protestant or you are a Catholic. Catholic, it was considered to be universal at that time. But Martin Luther, later John Calvin, down in Switzerland and later France, came up with a concept of predestination. So then we have Henry VIII finding the Anglican Church over a love affair. He wanted to get a divorce. But the Reformation is going on. But the Renaissance is key also, where the Europeans, particularly the Italians, look back at the writings of the Greeks and Romans and facilitated learning in Europe. This is the Renaissance. This is the rebirth. After going through the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, and Europe becoming Christianized, where people didn't see the need to learn and to study. We also see the development of the university system, liberal arts, and other courses. But what's global contact? What are we talking about? But all of these changes, religious, culturally, and artistically, facilitated the acceleration of global contact with people all over the globe. But the first one that we want to focus on is the Afro-Euro-Asian trade world. Now, this concept, before we go into this contact, but let's talk about an Italian named Marco Polo. You've heard of him, I'm sure. He traveled from Italy along the Silk Road to China, where he came in contact with the Great Khan and the immaculate culture of the Chinese. He, after many years, returned home, brought with him some food, stuff like spaghetti and pasta, came from the Chinese, not from the Italians, but Marco Polo brought that back. But he helped stimulate European interest in Asia and Southeast Asia and its exotic goods and spices. And this led the Portuguese to launch their exploration. And this was started by Prince Henry the Navigator. He was the first European mariner to sail down the Atlantic Ocean to the tip of Africa and round the Cape of Good Hope and sail into the Indian Ocean and come in contact with the East Indians. So the Portuguese, aided by the invention of a compass, first round the Cape of Good Hope, established colonies, trading posts, and opened up the trade with the East Asians. The Spanish, the British, and the French, and the Dutch, and the Germans all wanted in on this lucrative trade. And this would lead to the Europeans now sailing west. And of course, you all know the story about Columbus. He had three ships. He was an Italian merchant, went to Isabel and Ferdinand and said, I could make it to the Indies, the East Indies, by sailing west. And everyone said, don't do that because the earth is flat. And if you sail out into the Atlantic Ocean, you will drop off the face of the earth. Of course, that did not take place. He did arrive at in Hispaniola, that's Haiti and Santo Domingo, and he saw these copper tone people with long black hair, brown eyes, and he thought he was in the East Indies. Instead, he was in the West Indies and had come in contact with the Native American. And this opened up the floodgates. So the Portuguese was first, the Spanish would be second. And of course, this would lead to people like Ferdinand Magellan, the first to circumnavigate the globe. These are the Spanish, but the Portuguese are the leader in this trade. Now, the Portuguese, I told you about the significance of their technology and their sailing capabilities. But the Europeans adapted and also began to trade. And by doing so, the Spanish led the way with the colonization of this new land called North and South America. Their first landing was in the Caribbean on those islands, and later expedition would be launched by Coronado, De Soto, Pizarro. But also when they come into the Central America and Mexico, they run across two unique cultures that was far in advance of the Europeans: the Aztecs in Mexico and the Mayans in the Yucatan. But due to conflict, mainly the introduction of disease that the Native American was totally immune against. Plus, the Europeans, the Spanish in particular, had muskets and cannons and ships, but they brought with them something that was totally new to the Americas: the horse. The horse in Europe had revolutionized warfare. Now it was being introduced into the Americas. Now, if you watch cowboys and Indians on TV, you think the horse has been here all the time. But the horse was brought here by the Europeans, particularly the Spanish. But they conquered the Aztecs and was rolling in gold and silver coming from the Incas and the Aztecs and the mines that they had developed in the Americas. Made Charles V one of the wealthiest men on earth. And thanks Columbus, that's what started this. Now, of course, Columbus did not discover America because there was people already here, right? People had migrated across the Bering Sea, the Ice Bridge, and had been here in the Americas for thousands of years before Columbus got here. Also, the Vikings had sailed the northern route across the Atlantic, Greenland, Iceland, and had landed and founded a colony in Newfoundland some 500 to 600 years before Columbus. So that's the historical fact. But the conquest and the settlements, particularly in South Central America, propelled the Spanish on the world stage, thanks to Columbus. Now, the Portuguese went south and colonized Brazil. Now, the Portuguese had developed a crop in West Africa, took a crop that had developed in West Africa and brought it to the Americas: sugarcane. The European became addicted to sugar. They love sugar in their pastry, just like us today. We like sweet things. But anyway, the spices that the Portuguese were bringing from Indonesia, pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, later, coffee, tea, and sugar was desired. So with this, the Portuguese was the leader in developing this sugar trade, and it led to their gathering of wealth. Now, if you look at the map of Europe, you'll notice that Portugal and Spain occupied the Iberian Peninsula right across from the Strait of Gibraltar, which separates Europe from Africa. But it was the European and the Portuguese who got the head start and set up this ecumenical system that would lead to what we call the Columbian exchange, the exchange of goods and ideas between the Europeans and the Native Americans. In the process, the European committed genocide by introducing disease that the Native American was totally had no immunity for. Things like the common cold, whooping cough, measles, chickenpox, smallpox, all of those things are introduced to this native population. Now, they gave the Europeans something to take back to Europe, which I found interesting: syphilis. So, this is what we mean by this changing of goods and information. So, but the transatlantic trade was driven by sugar. And of course, to create sugar, you have to grow sugar cane, and you have to harvest it, crush it, granulize it to create sugar. In the process, you can also create an alcoholic beverage called rum. We'll talk about that later, triangle slave trade. But this would lead to the transportation of Africans to the Americas to harvest, to grow, harvest, and process the sugar cane, and to feed the Europeans attraction and addiction to sweets in their pastries and coffees and teas, etc. Now, the native refused to work on the plantation established by the Portuguese and the Spanish. They would commit suicide or run away and never be captured again. They needed laborers, and that's when they turned to Africa. And in Africa, the chiefs and the kings had their captors in warfare. They brought them to the coast and sold them to the Europeans. And the Europeans brought them to Brazil. Brazil, by the way, has the largest African population outside of Africa in the world. There are more blacks in Brazil than there are in America, believe it or not. But this transatlantic slave trade, we all know about that. We're going to talk more about it later. But that's the driving force behind establishing that slave trade. And we see the development of a global economy. Sounds, yeah. But that was shape the cultural attitudes and belief in Europe. And we've already talked about the religious conversion, and it also developed new ideas when it came to race. And we'll talk more about that, Mother. But this voyage, opening the Americas up to the transatlantic trade and the acceleration of contact with these people. It is a very interesting time period. We're going to talk more about it as we go on. What else do I want to tell you about? I'm going to load a PowerPoint slide. Pay close attention to that Columbian exchange slide. I think you will get a kick out of learning where food that we eat today and enjoy today came from. A lot of the food that we eat, like did not originate in the Americas. It came from Africa, Europe, and Asia. And a lot of products that are being consumed in Europe and Asia did not originate there. It originated in the Americas. First example would be maize or corn, only in North America. So make sure you check your PowerPoint slide and notes. And listen to this lecture, and I will see you next week. Be blessed, stay safe, and look forward to seeing you again. Caver out.